The cafeteria of Galactic Unity Academy was loud and busy. Students from 30 different worlds sat at long tables, eating food that matched their biology. Some ate glowing paste. Others chewed on living insects. A few breathed special gases through tubes connected to their meals dotted in the far corner. Near the emergency exit, a human girl sat alone. Her name was Yuna. She was 19 years old. Small in size, with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore the standard gray uniform of the academy, and she ate rice and vegetables from a metal container she had brought from her room. Her eyes stayed on her food, but anyone watching carefully would notice something strange. Every few seconds, those eyes would move. They would scan the room. They would check the doors. They would return to the food. Yuna had been at the academy for 3 months now. She came from Earth, a planet most species in the galaxy tried to avoid. Earth was what they called Class 12 Deathworld. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The creatures were endless killers. Even the tiny ones, the ones too small to see, could enter a body and destroy it from inside. Most aliens thought humans were lucky to survive on such a world. They did not understand that luck had nothing to do with it. Yuna finished her meal and cleaned her container with a small cloth. She put everything back in her bag slowly, carefully. She never rushed. Rushing meant mistakes. Mistakes meant death. This was something every child on Earth learned before they could walk. She stood up and walked toward the exit. Her steps were soft. Her posture was relaxed. She looked like any other tired student heading back to her room after a long day of classes. But she was not like any other student. On the other side of the cafeteria, a boy named Dohan watched her leave. He was also human, the only other one at the academy. He had brown skin, short hair, and curious eyes. He had tried to talk to Yuna many times since she arrived. She was always polite. She always smiled. But she never said anything real. Dohan knew there was something different about her. He just could not figure out what. Yuna walked through the main corridor of the station. Helix 7 was a massive structure floating in deep space. It held the academy, several research centers, and housing for 10,000 beings. The walls were white and clean. The lights were bright and steady. Everything was designed to feel safe and calm. Yuna did not feel safe. She had not felt safe since she was 7 years old. She turned left at the junction and entered a smaller hallway. This was the maintenance corridor. Most students avoided it because it was dark and boring. Yuna used it every day. It cut 15 minutes from her walk, and more importantly, it had fewer cameras, fewer witnesses. Old habits never died. As she walked, her mind drifted back to Earth, to the mountains of Gangwon Province, to the forests where she had learned to track animals before she learned to read, to the village where everyone knew everyone and where secrets could get you killed. She thought about her grandmother, a small woman with iron in her spine and fire in her words. Grandmother had taught Yuna everything. How to move without sound. How to read a person's intentions from their body. How to strike fast and disappear faster. The world is full of hunters, Grandmother had said one winter night, sharpening a knife by the fire. You must become the thing that hunters fear. Yuna had listened. She had learned. And when trouble came to their village, she had proven that the lessons were not wasted. That was why she was here now, hiding at the edge of known space, pretending to be nobody special. She reached the end of the maintenance corridor and stepped out into the residential wing. The human dormitory was small, just 20 rooms for the few humans scattered across the station. Most of them worked in the research centers or the trade offices. Yuna was the only student. Her room was simple. A bed, a desk, a small window that showed the stars. She had added nothing personal except a single photograph taped to the wall. It showed an old woman standing in front of a wooden house, mountains rising behind her. Yuna looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then she sat on her bed and pulled out her notebook. She wrote in Korean, using handwriting so small that it was almost impossible to read. She wrote about her classes, about the station, about the feeling that had been growing in her chest for the past week. Something was wrong. She could not explain it. There was no evidence, no clear sign. But her body knew. Her instincts, sharpened by 19 years on a Deathworld, were screaming at her. Someone was watching. Yuna closed the notebook and lay back on her bed. She stared at the ceiling and forced her breathing to slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 5 counts each way. Grandmother's technique for staying calm when the wolves circled. She thought about running. She could leave the station tomorrow. Take a transport to another system. Start over with a new name, a new story. But running would mean giving up her education. Giving up her chance at a real life. Giving up the dream of becoming someone other than a weapon. No, she would not run. Not yet. If they came for her, whoever they were, she would deal with them. She would do what she had always done. What every human had done since the beginning of time. She would survive. Yuna closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Her body relaxed, but some part of her mind stayed alert. Listening, waiting, ready. In the darkness of space, far from the station, a ship cut its engines and drifted in silence. Inside, 6 figures studied holographic images of a small human girl with black hair and empty eyes. She matches the profile, one of them clicked. Young, healthy, isolated, perfect for the markets. Deathworld specimens bring high prices, another agreed. The syndicate will reward us well. The leader leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the girl's image. We take her tomorrow, after her classes end. In the maintenance corridor where no one goes. The others chittered their agreement. They had done this 100 times before. They were professionals. They were predators. They had no idea what they were walking into. The next day passed slowly for Yuna. She sat through her morning lecture on alien biology, taking notes in her small handwriting while her classmates whispered and laughed around her. She answered one question from the professor, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms, and then returned to her silence. During lunch, she did not go to the cafeteria. Instead, she walked to the observation deck and stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. A small girl in a gray uniform. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. That was the mask she wore every day. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Heavy. Confident. She did not turn around. You missed lunch again, Dohwan said, stopping beside her. The rice today was actually good. I was not hungry, Yuna replied. You are never hungry. He looked at her sideways. You know, back on Earth, my mother would say that a person who does not eat is a person with too much on their mind. Yuna almost smiled. Almost. Your mother sounds wise. She is. She also says that humans should stick together, especially out here. He paused. We are the only 2 at this whole station. If you ever need to talk or need help with anything. Thank you, Yuna said. Her voice was soft but firm. I will remember. Dohwan nodded and walked away. He knew when he was being dismissed. But he also knew that the offer was real and that she had heard it. Yuna watched him go. For a moment, something warm flickered in her chest. It had been a long time since anyone had offered her friendship without wanting something in return. Then the warmth faded, replaced by the cold weight of reality. She could not afford friends. Friends were targets. Friends were leverage. Friends were the first thing enemies went after when they wanted to hurt you. She turned back to the stars and pushed Dohwan from her mind. The afternoon brought more classes, mathematics, galactic history. a workshop on communication across species barriers. Yuna participated just enough to avoid attention. She answered when called upon. She nodded at the right moments. She did everything a normal student would do. But beneath the surface, every nerve in her body was on fire. The feeling had grown stronger since morning. The sense of being watched. The pressure of unseen eyes. She had learned long ago to trust this feeling. It had saved her life more times than she could count. Today, it was screaming. The final bell rang at exactly 1700 station time. Students poured out of classrooms, filling the corridors with noise and movement. Yuna gathered her things slowly. She was in no hurry. Hurrying attracted attention. She waited until the crowds thinned before leaving the classroom. The main corridors were still busy, but she moved through them like water through rocks. Smooth, natural, invisible. At the junction, she paused. The maintenance corridor was just ahead. Dark, empty. 15 minutes, shorter than any other route. Her instincts told her not to go. She went anyway. If someone was waiting for her, she needed to know. Running would only delay the problem. Hiding would only give them time to plan something worse. Better to face it now, on ground, she knew, than to let them choose the battlefield. The maintenance corridor was exactly as it always was. Long, dim, lined with pipes and panels that hummed with the station's power. Her footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor. She was halfway through when the lights went out. Yuna stopped. Her eyes adjusted quickly. Humans had evolved to see in low light, a gift from millions of years hunting at dawn and dusk. The darkness was not complete. She could see shapes, shadows, movement. 6 shapes stepped out of the walls. Not the walls exactly. They had been hiding in recesses and behind panels, using some kind of technology to mask their presence. Now they surrounded her in a half circle, blocking the way forward and leaving only the long walk back. They were tall, taller than any human. Their bodies were covered in hard plates, like the shells of insects. Their heads had no real faces, just clusters of eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Their arms ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Veth. Yuna recognized them from her xenobiology class, a species known for their hunting skills and their complete lack of morality. They worked as mercenaries, slavers, and killers for hire. The galaxy feared them. The leader stepped forward. He was larger than the others, with ritual scars carved across his chestplate. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device on his throat, turning his clicks and hisses into flat, mechanical words. Human female. You will come with us. The Syndicate has buyers who pay premium prices for Deathworld specimens. Your kind is durable. You will survive the transport. He paused. You will wish you did not. Yuna set her bag down slowly. Her movements were calm, controlled. She straightened up and looked at the leader with steady eyes. I am going to give you one chance, she said. Turn around. Walk away. Forget you ever saw me. The hunters laughed. It was a terrible sound, like metal scraping against metal. They had done this many times before. They had heard threats from 100 different species. None of those threats had ever meant anything. Small creature, the leader said. You do not understand your situation. You are alone. You are weak. You are prey. Yuna tilted her head slightly. No, she said softly. I understand the situation perfectly. You are the ones who do not understand. She raised her hands not in surrender, but in preparation. Her fingers were relaxed. Her weight shifted to the balls of her feet. Her breathing slowed until it was almost invisible. The hunters saw none of this. They saw only a small girl in a gray uniform, standing alone in the dark. They saw easy money, an easy capture, an easy job. They were about to learn that nothing about humanity was easy. The leader clicked his claws together. Take her. Do not damage her too badly. Damage goods sell for less. Two hunters moved forward. Yuna moved faster. The darkness exploded into violence, and the corridor that had been so quiet moments before became a place of screaming and blood. The hunters had come looking for prey. They found something else entirely. The first hunter reached for Yuna with both claws. He was fast by galactic standards. His species could move quickly when they wanted to. Their insect bodies built for sudden bursts of speed. But Yuna was faster. She did not dodge backward like prey would. She moved forward, into the attack, slipping between the reaching claws like smoke through fingers. Her hand shot up and found the soft spot beneath the hunter's chin, where the plates of his exoskeleton did not quite meet. Her thumb pressed in, hard and precise, crushing the nerve cluster hidden there. The hunter's eyes went dark. His body locked up. He fell to the ground without making a sound. 1 second. One movement. One kill. The other hunters froze. They could not believe what they had just seen. Their brother had been the fastest among them. He had taken down creatures twice his size. And now he lay on the ground, destroyed by a creature that barely reached his chest. Yuna did not give them time to think. She spun toward the second hunter, the one who had been moving with the first. He tried to raise his claws in defense, but she was already inside his guard. Her elbow struck his throat. Her knee came up into his midsection. Her palm slammed against the side of his head, cracking the plate there and scrambling whatever served as his brain. He dropped beside his brother. 2 seconds. 2 kills. The remaining 4 hunters backed away. Their clicking sounds were different now. Higher pitched. Faster. This was fear, Yuna knew. She had heard fear in many languages. What are you? One of them hissed through his translator. Yuna rolled her shoulders. Her breathing was still calm. Her heart rate was elevated but controlled. This was what her body was designed for. This was what millions of years of evolution had created. I am human, she said simply. Did no one teach you what that means? She stepped forward. They stepped back. Humans come from Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld. Do you know what makes a Deathworld? Not just the predators. Not just the weather. Not just the diseases. She took another step. It is the constant, endless pressure of death. Every moment of every day. For millions of years. Another step. The hunters were pressed against the corridor walls now, their compound eyes wide with terror. We did not just survive that pressure. We thrived in it. We became the top predators on a planet filled with killers. We hunted creatures 10 times our size. We tamed fire. We split the atom. We crawled out of our gravity well and spread across the stars. She stopped in front of the third hunter. He was trembling. Every human you have ever seen, Yuna continued, every soft, small, harmless-looking human is the descendant of survivors. The weak died long ago. What remains is us. She moved. The third hunter tried to fight. He swung his claws in a desperate arc, aiming for her head. Yuna ducked under the strike, grabbed his arm, and twisted. Joints popped. Chitin cracked. The hunter screamed. She silenced him with a strike to the base of his skull. 3 seconds. 3 kills. The fourth and fifth hunters attacked together. They had finally overcome their shock and remembered their training. They came at her from both sides, coordinating their movements, trying to overwhelm her with numbers. It did not help. Yuna caught the fourth hunter's claw with her left hand. The force of the blow would have shattered the bones of most species. Human bones were different. Dense, strong, built to absorb, impact, and keep moving. She redirected the claw into the fifth hunter's body. The sharp edge punched through his chest plate. He staggered, confused, looking down at the arm of his companion buried in his chest. Yuna finished him with a kick to his knee. then spun and broke the fourth hunter's neck with a single rotation of her hands. 5 seconds. 5 kills. The leader stood alone. He had not moved during the fight. He had watched his soldiers, his brothers, his hunters fall one by one. His compound eyes had recorded every movement, every strike, every death. His mind was trying to process what he had seen, but it could not. It was impossible. It was against everything he knew about the galaxy. Prey did not fight back. Prey did not win. Prey did not stand calmly over the bodies of its predators and look at you with empty eyes. What? He started to say, but his voice died in his throat. Yuna approached him slowly. There was no hurry now. The fight was over. The only thing left was cleanup. You made a mistake, she said. You saw a small creature from a dangerous world and thought that made me valuable. You were right. Humans are valuable. We are adaptable. We are resilient. We heal quickly. We can survive conditions that kill most species. She stopped an arm's length away from him. But you forgot something important. You forgot why we can survive those conditions. You forgot that the same evolution that made us durable also made us deadly. She looked at the bodies around her. Your files told you we were prey animals. Your files were wrong. We were never prey. We are persistence predators. We evolved to chase things until they died of exhaustion, to track them for days across any terrain, to never, ever give up. The leader's legs buckled. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the ground, looking up at her. Please, he whispered. Yuna felt nothing. Not mercy. Not satisfaction. Not anger. Just the cold calculation of survival. He had seen her face. He had seen what she could do. He had a ship waiting somewhere with communication equipment. She could not let him leave. On Earth, she said quietly, we have another saying. Dead men tell no tales. She knelt beside him. Her hands moved once, quickly, precisely. The leader's eyes went dark. 6 hunters had come to take a small, human girl to the slave markets. None of them would be going home. Yuna stood in the darkness, surrounded by bodies. The corridor was silent now. The only sounds were the distant hum of the station's power systems and the soft drip of alien blood pooling on the metal floor. She allowed herself 30 seconds to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 5 counts each way. Her heart rate slowed. The adrenaline in her blood began to fade. Her hands stopped shaking. Grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. The fight is only half the battle. What comes after is what separates the living from the dead. Yuna opened her eyes and got to work. First, she checked each body. She pressed her fingers against the nerve clusters she had targeted, confirming that each hunter was truly dead. She had made this mistake once years ago, back on Earth. She had left someone alive. That someone had talked. She would not make that mistake again. Next, she searched them. The hunters carried very little. No identification. No personal items. This was professional. They had expected to grab her and disappear without leaving any trace of who they were. She found 3 things of value. The leader's communication device, still blinking with an unsent message. A small injector filled with sedative, meant to keep her quiet during transport. And a data chip tucked into a hidden pocket on one of the smaller hunters. She pocketed all 3. The communication device was her biggest concern. If the hunters had checked in with their ship or their employers before the attack, then people would be expecting to hear from them. When they did not respond, others would come looking. She examined the device carefully. It showed no outgoing signals in the last 6 hours. The hunters had maintained radio silence, probably to avoid detection by station security. Their caution had just saved her life. She crushed the device under her heel and scattered the pieces. Now came the hard part. The bodies. 6 adult Veth weighed approximately 100 kilograms each. That was 600 kilograms of evidence that needed to disappear. On Earth, there would be forests, rivers, caves. Here on a space station, her options were limited, but not impossible. Una thought back to her first week at the academy. She had explored every section of Helix 7, memorizing the layout, identifying useful locations. Old habit, paranoia, whatever you wanted to call it. It was about to pay off. 3 levels below the maintenance corridor was the waste processing center. Every station needed one. Organic waste, broken equipment, damaged materials. All of it went into massive grinders that reduced everything to its component molecules. The molecules were then recycled or ejected into space. Nothing that went into those grinders ever came out. Una grabbed the first body by its arms and began to drag. The hunter was heavy, but she was stronger than she looked. Humans had evolved to carry things, to lift, to pull, to drag prey back to the tribe. Her muscles burned, but they did not fail. It took her 45 minutes to move all 6 bodies to a service elevator that connected to the processing level. She used the data chip she had taken from the hunter to bypass the security lock. Veth technology. They had planned to use it to access restricted areas of the station. Now it was helping her hide their deaths. The processing center was automated. No workers. No witnesses. Just machines doing what machines did best. Una fed the bodies into the intake chute one by one. She watched them disappear into the darkness below, listened to the distant sound of grinding, and felt nothing. These hunters would have sold her into slavery. They would have laughed while she suffered. They did not deserve her guilt. When the last body was gone, she turned her attention to the corridor. Blood was harder to hide than bodies. It soaked into surfaces. It left traces that could be detected by forensic equipment. But Veth blood was acidic. It would eat through the metal floor if left alone, leaving obvious damage that would trigger an investigation. Una found a cleaning supply closet on the maintenance level. She took neutralizing agents and scrubbing tools. For the next 2 hours, she cleaned the corridor centimeter by centimeter. She used the chemicals to break down the blood. She used the tools to scrub away any residue. She used her own shirt, soaked in solvent, to wipe down every surface she had touched. By the time she finished, the corridor looked exactly as it always had. Dim, boring, empty. There was no sign that 6 hunters had died here. No sign that anything had happened at all. Una disposed of the cleaning supplies in the same grinder that had taken the bodies. She found a new shirt in her dormitory and changed. She washed her hands and face. She combed her hair. When she looked in the mirror, she saw the same person who had left for class that morning. A small girl with black hair and tired eyes. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. The mask was back in place. She sat on her bed and examined the data chip she had taken. It contained information about the Veth Syndicate's operations in the sector. Names, locations, targets. She found her own file among the others. It listed her as a high-value specimen with minimal security risk. They had been watching her for weeks. They knew her schedule, her routes, her habits. They knew she was isolated, that she had no friends or family on the station. They thought she would be easy. Their intelligence had failed them in one critical way. They had noted that she came from Earth. They had noted that she was young and female and small. But they had not understood what those facts meant together. They had not understood that Earth did not produce victims. Una deleted her file from the chip and considered what to do with the rest of the information. She could give it to station security. She could expose the syndicate's operations and potentially save other targets. But that would mean attention, questions, investigations. That might lead back to her. She could not risk that. Instead, She memorized the most important details and then destroyed the chip. If the syndicate sent more hunters, she would be ready. If they targeted other humans on the station, she would know where to find them. Grandmother had taught her to be prepared for anything. Yuna lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she would go to class. She would eat lunch alone. She would walk through the maintenance corridor like nothing had happened. And if anyone asked about the 6 missing hunters, she would have no idea what they were talking about. The perfect crime was not one that could not be solved. The perfect crime was one that no one knew had happened. Yuna closed her eyes and let exhaustion take her. For the first time in weeks, the feeling of being watched was gone. She had sent a message. She hoped the syndicate would receive it. Do not hunt what you cannot kill. Morning came to Helix 7 the way it always did. The lights in the corridors shifted from dim blue to warm white. The air recyclers increased their output. The station woke up, and its 10,000 inhabitants began their daily routines. Yuna sat in the cafeteria, eating rice porridge from a metal bowl. She had slept for 6 hours, which was more than she usually managed. Her body felt heavy but calm. The soreness in her muscles was fading. The small cuts on her hands, hidden beneath bandages, were already beginning to heal. Humans healed quickly. Another gift from evolution. Another reason they were valuable to slavers. She pushed the thought away and focused on her food. The cafeteria was filling up with the usual morning crowd. Students and workers shuffled past, carrying trays of species-appropriate meals. No one looked at Yuna. No one paid attention to the small human girl in the corner. She was invisible, exactly as she wanted to be. Her tablet sat beside her bowl, displaying the morning news feed. There was a small item near the bottom of the page. Maintenance personnel had reported some minor damage in corridor 7 Delta. Something about acid burns on the floor panels. The station was scheduling repairs. No mention of missing persons. No mention of Veth hunters. No mention of blood or violence or death. Yuna turned off the tablet and continued eating. Footsteps approached her table. She did not look up. She already knew who it was. Humans had a distinctive way of walking, different from every other species. She could recognize Dohwan's footsteps from across the room. He sat down across from her without asking permission. He had a tray of eggs and toast in front of him, earth food imported at great expense. His face was open and friendly, but his eyes were careful. "You look tired," he said. "I could not sleep well," Yuna replied. "Bad dreams. About what?" Yuna was silent for a moment. She thought about what to say. The truth was impossible. A lie felt wrong. She settled for something in between. "About home. About why I left." Dohwan nodded slowly. He did not push for more. Instead, he picked up his fork and started eating. They sat together in comfortable silence. Around them, the cafeteria buzzed with alien languages and strange sounds. But here, at this small table in the corner, there was a little piece of Earth. 2 humans. 2 survivors. 2 people who understood things that no other species could understand. After a few minutes, Dohwan spoke again. "I heard something interesting last night. Some of the security officers were talking about a ship that left the station suddenly. Veth registration. No departure clearance. Just powered up and jumped to hyperspace without warning." Yuna kept her face neutral. "That is strange." "It is. The Veth usually follow protocols. They are professional about these things." He looked at her steadily. "Station records show the ship arrived 3 weeks ago. 6 crew members. None of them ever checked in at immigration." "Maybe they were doing something illegal," Yuna suggested. "Maybe they did not want to be documented. Maybe." Dohwan took a bite of his toast. "The security officers think they were slavers. There have been reports of kidnappings in this sector. Young specimens from unusual worlds. high-value targets for the underground markets. That is terrible, Yuna said. Her voice was flat. It is. But here's the strange part. Do-hwan leaned forward slightly. The ship left, but the 6 crew members never returned to it. Their life signs never registered on the departure scan. It is like they just disappeared. Yuna met his eyes. For a long moment, they looked at each other. Something passed between them. An understanding. A recognition. Do-hwan was not stupid. He had been putting pieces together all morning. The strange ship. The missing crew. The minor damage in the same corridor Yuna used every day. The fact that she was sitting here calmly eating breakfast instead of being loaded onto a slaver's transport. He knew. Maybe not the details, but he knew. Whoever made them disappear, Do-hwan said slowly. Did the galaxy a favor? Yuna said nothing. And if that person ever needed help, he continued. With anything, I hope they know they are not alone. Yuna looked at him for a long time. She saw kindness in his face, sincerity, but she also saw something else. Something harder. Something that reminded her of the look in grandmother's eyes when the old woman talked about the war, about the occupation, about the things she had done to survive. Do-hwan was not just a friendly student. He was a Deathworlder too. He had his own stories, his own secrets, his own reasons for being so far from home. Maybe, just maybe, she did not have to be completely alone. Thank you, she said quietly. I will remember that. Do-hwan smiled and returned to his breakfast. The conversation moved to safer topics. Classes, professors, the terrible coffee in the faculty lounge. Normal things. Student things. But beneath the normal words, something had changed. Yuna had spent 3 months being invisible, being nobody, being safe. Now, for the first time, someone had seen through the mask. Someone knew what she was capable of. And instead of running away, he had offered to stand beside her. She did not know if that was foolish or brave. Maybe it was both. The morning bell rang, signaling the start of classes. Students around them began to stand, gathering their things, heading toward the lecture halls. Yuna finished her porridge and cleaned her bowl. As she walked toward the exit, Do-hwan fell into step beside her. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Yuna considered. Having a routine was dangerous. Patterns could be tracked. But patterns also provided cover. 2 humans eating breakfast together was less suspicious than 1 human always eating alone. Same time tomorrow, she agreed. They walked to class together, 2 small figures among the crowds of aliens. To anyone watching, they were just students, just humans, just another pair of unremarkable beings going about their unremarkable lives. But somewhere in the galaxy, the Veth Syndicate was receiving reports. 6 of their best hunters had vanished without a trace. Their ship had fled in panic, abandoning the mission. Their target, a young human female, was still walking free. The Syndicate would investigate. They would analyze. They would try to understand what had happened. And eventually, they would realize the truth. They had sent hunters after a Deathworld girl. The Deathworld girl had hunted them. Instead, Yuna entered the lecture hall and took her usual seat in the back corner. She pulled out her notebook and her pen. She looked like any other tired student preparing for another boring class, but her eyes still scanned the room. Her weight still rested on the balls of her feet. Her hands still remembered exactly how to find the soft spots in Veth armor. The galaxy was full of predators. Yuna had learned that lesson long ago. The trick was not to become prey. The trick was to become something worse. She opened her notebook and began to write. Today's lecture was about the classification of dangerous worlds. The professor droned on about gravity levels and atmospheric toxicity and native predator populations. He explained how Class 12, Deathworlds were considered too dangerous for most species to colonize. Yuna smiled slightly and kept writing. The professor had never been to Earth. He had no idea what dangerous really meant.